Hello. Today General Hospital will reveal interesting details on Thursday, August 14, 2025. First, Dante and Brook Lynn had spent years apart, each carrying their own burden of guilt and regret. The distance between them and Gio, their son, was not just emotional, but a painful reminder of their past mistakes. They had abandoned Gio in his most vulnerable years, a decision they could never undo. Dante, in particular, struggled with the weight of his actions. He knew the hurt he caused, not just to Gio, but to himself as well. It was a bitter pill to swallow, knowing that his son could never see him as the man he once was, let alone as a father. Brook Lynn, too, was not without her own regrets. She had distanced herself from Gio, thinking it was for the best at the time, but in hindsight, she realized it was a decision driven by fear and uncertainty. She missed the opportunity to be the mother Gio needed and, like Dante, had to live with the knowledge that her choices had led to a broken family. Their reunion, though long overdue, brought back both painful memories and a glimmer of hope. They both knew the road ahead would be challenging, but the weight of their past mistakes was something they were determined to bear together. Gio, on the other hand, was understandably angry. The wounds of abandonment ran deep, and every time Dante and Brook Lynn tried to reach out, he recoiled in bitter resentment. He couldn't forgive them, not yet. The trust they had once shared was shattered, and all that remained was the aching emptiness of a son who had been left behind. Despite their heartfelt apologies, Gio could not see past the past. He didn't want them back in his life, not as parents, not as anything. He had built walls around himself, and no matter how much they tried to tear them down, they met with resistance. But Dante and Brook Lynn were undeterred. They made a pact, one that was forged in the depths of their shared guilt. They would work together to earn Joe's forgiveness. It was not going to be easy. They knew that. Their efforts would be met with suspicion, hostility, and hurt. Yet, they also understood that they couldn't afford to give up. This was not just about making amends for the past, but about creating a future where Gio could feel loved, supported, and secure. They began slowly, reaching out in small, sincere ways, offering their help, giving him space when needed, but never pulling away. It wasn't about demanding forgiveness, but about showing Gio that they were no longer the people who had hurt him. With each passing day, their bond grew stronger. Dante and Brook Lynn supported each other through the emotional roller coaster of trying to rebuild a relationship with Gio. There were moments of hope, where Gio would let his guard down just a little, and moments of frustration, where everything seemed lost. But they held on to the belief that time, patience, and love could heal even the deepest of wounds. They would no longer let their past define them or their relationship with Gio. Instead, they made a conscious decision to start over, to write a new story, one where they could prove to him that they were capable of being the parents he deserved. The journey was long, and the results were not instant, but Dante and Brook Lynn knew that what mattered most was the effort they put in every day. Slowly but surely, they chipped away at Joe's walls. It was a painstaking process, full of setbacks and small victories. But in the end, they believed that the love they had for Gio could overcome any obstacle. They had to prove that their relationship with him was worth the struggle, worth the sacrifice, and worth the effort. And with every step they took together, they became more certain that, in time, Gio would see them not as the people who abandoned him, but as the parents who fought for him, who fought for their family, and who would never give up on him again. Second, Trina and Kai's relationship, once filled with love and shared dreams, had come crashing down in a way neither of them had anticipated. What had started as a beautiful connection now felt like a painful reminder of betrayal. Trina, still reeling from the shock of Kai's decision to follow Drew and abandon her family, was consumed by anger. She couldn't understand how Kai, the person she had trusted so deeply, could make such a decision that not only hurt her but also endangered her parents. The pain of seeing him stand beside Drew, a man who had caused so much chaos in their lives, felt like a slap in the face. The love she once felt for him had turned into resentment, and she couldn't fathom a future where she could ever forgive him. For Kai, the aftermath of his actions was far more difficult than he could have imagined. The guilt gnawed at him relentlessly as he watched Trina push him away, her anger a constant reminder of the damage he had caused. He never intended to hurt her or her family, but in his desperation to follow Drew, he had betrayed the very people who had once meant everything to him. He had foolishly believed that by following Drew, he could gain something he needed, not realizing the consequences of his actions. Now, all he could think about was how his choices had destroyed the trust between him and Trina. His heart ached as he saw her distance herself, her eyes filled with distrust and pain. He knew he had lost her, but he couldn't bring himself to let go without trying to make things right. Stella, always the wise and understanding figure in their lives, watched the unraveling of Trina and Kai's relationship from the sidelines. She understood Trina's pain, but she also saw something in Kai that others might have missed. The remorse in his eyes, the way he was struggling with the weight of his mistakes, convinced Stella that he wasn't a lost cause. She saw a young man who had made a wrong turn but was genuinely trying to right his wrongs. Stella knew that love was never simple, and she understood that Trina's anger was justified. However, she also believed that Kai deserved a chance to redeem himself, and more importantly, she believed that Trina needed to hear him out before completely shutting him out. Stella's words to Kai were clear: if he truly loved Trina, he had to fight for her. He couldn't just walk away in shame, he had to show her, through his actions, that he was capable of change and that he was willing to earn back her trust. Trina, however, was not so easily convinced. Her heart, still raw from the betrayal, refused to soften. Kai's actions had left a scar that she wasn't ready to forget, and the thought of him trying to fight for her seemed almost laughable. How could she even entertain the idea of letting him back into her life after he had turned his back on her and her family? The anger that boiled inside her whenever she thought of him was overwhelming. It wasn't just about what he did. It was about the fact that she had trusted him and had been let down in the worst possible way. She wasn't ready to hear him out, not yet. Her heart had been broken, and though she might have once loved him, that love now seemed like a distant memory. But despite her anger, Kai wasn't ready to give up. He understood that the road ahead would be long and full of obstacles, but he couldn't let go of the belief that Trina still cared for him, even if she didn't want to admit it. The guilt and remorse he felt for what he had done fueled his determination. He knew that in order to prove himself to her, he would have to show her that he wasn't just another mistake. He needed to earn back her trust, even if it meant starting from the very beginning. With Stella's encouragement, Kai made it his mission to find a way to prove to Trina that he had changed and that he was ready to fight for the love they once shared. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew that without trying, he would never have a chance to make things right. As the days passed, Kai began to understand that this wasn't just about winning Trina back, it was about redeeming himself and proving to everyone, especially himself, that he was capable of making better choices. He had made a huge mistake, and he was determined to show that he could learn from it. The fight for Trina's forgiveness wasn't just a battle for her love. It was a battle for his own sense of worth. He knew that the road to redemption would be difficult and that Trina's heart was not something easily won back. But he wasn't ready to give up on her or on himself. Third, Michael could see the pain in Joe's eyes as the young man sat with his arms crossed, staring out into the distance. He knew what was weighing on Joe's heart, the overwhelming anger and betrayal he felt toward Dante and Brook Lynn. The wounds from their abandonment were still fresh, and Gio couldn't bring himself to look at them as anything but the people who had turned their backs on him when he needed them most. For him, the idea of forgiveness seemed impossible. His parents had promised to be there for him, but their actions had shattered that trust. His resentment ran deep, and Michael knew it wasn't just about what had happened, it was about the years of pain Gio had carried alone. But Michael wasn't one to give up easily, especially when it came to helping someone he cared about. He sat next to Gio, his voice calm but filled with understanding. "I know you're angry," Michael began, "and you have every right to be. What they did hurt you in ways I can't even imagine." He paused, letting his words sink in. Gio remained silent, but Michael could feel the tension in the air. But you have to remember, everyone makes mistakes. Dante and Brook Lynn have their flaws, just like anyone else. They're not perfect, and they've hurt you, yes. But that doesn't mean they don't regret it. Gio looked at Michael, his face contorting with frustration. How can you say that? How can you forgive them for what they did? His voice cracked, the raw emotion evident in every word. They left me, Michael. They weren't there when I needed them the most. And now they want to come back and act like everything's fine. I can't just forget what they did. Michael nodded, acknowledging the depth of Joe's hurt. I get it, he said softly. I really do. I've had my share of disappointments and betrayals too, you know. But holding on to that anger, letting it consume you, it doesn't help. It only makes things worse. And as much as it feels like they don't deserve your forgiveness, they're still your parents. They've made their mistakes, but they also want to make things right with you. If you don't give them a chance, you'll never know if they can change or if they can truly make amends. Joe's jaw tightened, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Michael continued, his voice gentle but firm. Forgiving them doesn't mean you're saying it's okay. It doesn't mean you have to forget what happened. But it does mean you're choosing to heal. You're choosing to move forward. You're choosing to not let their mistakes control your happiness. You don't have to let that anger rule you. You deserve better than that. For a moment, Gio sat in silence, the weight of Michael's words hanging heavily between them. It wasn't easy to forgive. Michael knew that. But he also knew that carrying the burden of anger could be far more damaging than forgiving those who had hurt you. I know it's hard, Michael added, but it's up to you to decide what you want. Do you want to keep holding on to the past, or do you want to try and make something better out of the future? You're stronger than you think, Gio. You don't have to do it alone. And if you want to talk to Dante and Brook Lynn, I'll be here for you. But at some point, you'll need to decide if you want to move forward. Gio let out a long breath, the tension in his body slowly beginning to ease. The anger was still there, but Michael's words had planted a seed of doubt. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for healing. It wouldn't happen overnight, and it wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in a long while, Gio felt the weight of the past begin to lift, even if just a little. He wasn't ready to forgive yet, but he was willing to consider it. Michael had given him the space to think about it, and for that, he was grateful. Fourth, Chase sat quietly in the living room, his mind racing with thoughts that had been clouding his judgment for weeks. The weight of the situation was pressing on him, and he needed someone to talk to. His marriage with Brook Lynn had always been built on trust, love, and mutual understanding, but recently, everything had started to unravel. The decision Brook Lynn made to put their adoption plans on hold to focus on her son, Gio, had hit him harder than he expected. He had always known that Gio was a priority for her, but this felt different. The adoption had been something they had both dreamed about, a future they had envisioned together. Now, it seemed like those dreams were slipping away. Willow, always a calm presence in his life, noticed the shift in his demeanor the moment she entered the room. She could see the storm behind his eyes, the frustration and hurt that were too obvious to ignore. Without saying a word, she sat beside him, offering the comfort of her quiet understanding. She didn't need him to speak. She could feel the weight of his sorrow in the silence. After a moment, Chase broke it, his voice heavy with emotion. I just don't know what to do anymore, Willow, he confessed, his voice trembling slightly. Brook Lynn is all about Gio right now. And I get it, I really do. But it feels like everything we planned is slipping away. She's putting our future on hold for him, and I'm just, here. Alone. Willow listened closely, her heart aching for her friend. She had seen how much Chase loved Brook Lynn, how deeply he cared for her and the life they were trying to build together. She could hear the pain in his words, the sense of abandonment that had settled in his chest. I know this is hard for you, Chase, Willow said softly, her voice full of compassion. But relationships aren't always black and white. It's not about choosing one person over the other. Brook Lynn's love for Gio doesn't mean she loves you any less. She's just in a difficult place right now, and it's hard for her to juggle everything. That doesn't mean she's abandoning you. Chase let out a deep sigh, his frustration bubbling to the surface. But I don't know how much longer I can do this, Willow. It feels like she's growing closer to Dante, and every time I try to talk to her about us, she brushes it off. Gio needs her, and I get that. But I feel like I'm losing her bit by bit, and it's killing me. His voice cracked, the vulnerability he had been hiding now clear in his words. I just don't want to lose her. I want to fight for us, but I don't know if I even have a chance. Willow reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his. Chase, I know it's painful. But don't forget that love isn't always easy. It's not about how perfect things are right now, it's about what you're both willing to fight for. I think you need to talk to Brook Lynn, really talk to her, and express how you feel. Don't hold back, because if you do, you'll never know if there's a way forward for both of you. She needs to understand your pain too, not just her own. Her eyes met his, steady and kind. You've always been there for her, and I believe she will be there for you, too. You just need to make sure that you're both on the same page about what you both want. Chase nodded slowly, her words sinking in. He knew Willow was right. He couldn't keep burying his feelings and waiting for things to magically fix themselves. If he wanted his marriage to survive, he had to face the truth and talk openly with Brook Lynn about his fears and frustrations. He had to remind her, and himself, that their future mattered. As hard as it was, he couldn't allow his own doubts and insecurities to dictate the outcome of their relationship. It wasn't about fighting for Joe's attention. It was about fighting for the life they had once dreamed of together. Thank you, Willow, Chase said quietly, the weight of the conversation starting to lift from his shoulders. I don't have all the answers, but I know I need to do something. I can't keep feeling like this. I need to fight for what we had, even if it's hard. And I think you're right, Brook Lynn needs to hear what I'm feeling. Willow gave him a small, encouraging smile, knowing that Chase had taken the first step toward healing, not just for himself, but for his marriage with Brook Lynn. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least he wasn't alone in the struggle anymore. Finally, Molly sat quietly, watching Drew as he paced back and forth, his hands running through his hair in frustration. She could feel the tension in the room, the weight of the situation hanging heavily between them. The more she thought about Scout's disappearance, the more her anxiety grew. The last few hours had felt like a lifetime. Drew, usually so decisive, seemed paralyzed by the unknown, and Molly couldn't stand seeing him like this. She knew he needed a push, something to snap him out of the disbelief and uncertainty clouding his mind. She had to make him see the reality of the situation, that Scout was in immediate danger, and the longer they waited, the harder it would be to find her. Drew, you need to understand, Molly said, her voice steady but laced with urgency. Scout is in real danger. I know you're trying to process everything, but we don't have the luxury of time right now. We have to act, and we have to act fast. Drew stopped pacing and turned to face her, his eyes clouded with fear. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Molly could see the pain in his eyes, the helplessness that came with being a father unable to protect his child. But this wasn't the time for hesitation. You need to go out there and find her, Drew, Molly insisted, her tone firm. We can't wait any longer. The longer she's out there, the more dangerous this becomes. Drew's expression faltered, and he looked away, torn between his instincts to stay calm and the rising panic inside him. I don't know where to begin, Molly, he muttered, rubbing his face with both hands. I've already searched everywhere I could think of. What if she's already gone? What if we're too late? Molly's heart broke for him, she could feel his pain, but there was no time for self-doubt. She had to make him see the truth. "Drew," she said, her voice softening, "I know you're scared. We all are. But you're her father. You're the one who's supposed to protect her, and that's what you need to do now. If you keep waiting, if you don't act right now, you're not just risking losing time, you're risking losing her." The weight of her words seemed to hang in the air. Drew stood frozen, a mixture of guilt and fear evident on his face. He was scared, scared of making the wrong decision, scared of failing Scout. But Molly knew he couldn't keep waiting for things to fix themselves. She stepped closer to him, placing a hand on his arm in a gesture of support. "You can't do this alone," she said gently. "You have the people around you who can help, your resources, your connections. But you have to take that first step, Drew. You have to stop questioning yourself and trust that you can do this. Scout needs you, and the longer you wait, the harder it will be to find her." Drew took a deep breath, his mind swirling with conflicting thoughts. He felt the weight of the responsibility pressing down on him, suffocating him. His heart ached as he thought of Scout, alone and vulnerable. The thought of losing her was unbearable. "But what if I don't find her in time?" Drew's voice trembled with emotion.